Hello and welcome back to another Bible reading discussion. We're back.
Roaming through Romans.
Roaming through Romans, yep. Guess so. The Roman road.
The Roman road. Only the real Roman road.
The real Roman road. We're in Romans 12.
It's a tremendous chapter, and it brings a whole lot of things with it to focus on.
Yep.
The practical. So what does that mean? And as the Sermon on the Mount had Jesus show, it's a lot about everyday stuff with everyday people being their God self.
Yeah, because nobody can boast in their own salvation and works, how are we to live then?
Yes. We would need to get ourselves out of the way.
Yep.
Because self is never going to get it done. And get taken over by somebody. Could it be Jesus? Yes, it
Possibly.
could. Therefore, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, this is serious stuff, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship or reasonable service of worship. There's a little debate there. Somehow or another, it doesn't really matter. But one of the things is him bringing the Old Testament forward with the concept of priesthood and sacrifices, because we know that we are a priesthood. And he says, unlike the sacrifices that were killed and offered, we can be a living sacrifice every day.
Yeah, Jesus died so that we can live.
Mm-hmm.
And so our sacrifice is to not die, but to live
in him. Mm-hmm. Do not be conformed to this world, which is a huge thing all through the scriptures, but be, here's the word, doesn't say just be different, it says be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. The rich young ruler, as we often call him, came to Jesus, and in Matthew's account, which brings all the Pharisee stuff that Matthew's account had, says, what good thing can I do?
Yeah.
And he's looking for a thing. Maybe I left something out. Like the thing to the unknown God in Acts 17. The Greeks are thinking, maybe we'll have one of them out. We need to get him in there. And so Jesus takes him on a journey to show him it's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's you.
Yeah. And so it's, especially to the Jew here, he's been kind of quit putting so much faith and stock in your heritage, in your bloodline. The idea of what it looks like is to be transformed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the transformation is you are no longer you.
Mm-hmm.
You are now as much Christ as you can be in you.
And you're working on that until you can't work anymore.
Yeah, you're not going to look the same.
Romans 8:29, whom he foreknew, the Father, what did he have in mind? He predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son,
Yep.
so that he might be the firstborn among many brethren.
Yep.
For through the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted each a measure of faith. For just as we have many members in one body, all the members do not have the same function, so we, who are many, are one body in Christ, individually members one of another. So that's what it looks like. It looks like what Jesus did when he set up the church.
Yeah. So, and here's the cool thing: if we can boast in none of our own accomplishments, then even the mercies or the gifts that we have, is what he's going to be saying. We need to see them as a gift from whom? As a gift from God. And if you are good at something, or if you excel in an area, I believe in most of these areas anyone can excel in.
Yes, some more suited for others, but where do we get that from?
Yeah, from God.
God.
And he says, find your area, find your niche, right? And you don't have to be good at everything. That's kind of the Jesus.
You can't be good at everything.
If I give you a cup of water, I expect you to use it.
Yeah.
know.
If you do that well, I'm happy.
I'm happy. And
Jesus
so
is happy. We ought to be happy.
God does give each of us gifts. And I do believe there are people who are suited for preaching and those who are not. It doesn't make someone a good person or a bad person.
No.
There are some people who are suited for elders.
Some who are not.
Some will never be, just
No.
because of maybe even temperament. Maybe
Deacons,
because
Bible class teacher.
Yeah.
If you don't do any of those things that get attention, so to speak, but you're doing your gift and doing it well, God is happy as he can be with you.
And that's one of the reasons why Paul will say in 1 Corinthians 12, the idea of elevating those who aren't seen as much, because a lot of times we think what me and you do are the big, you know,
preachers.
They're the spectacle, they're the ones who keep the church going. And unfortunately, sometimes that's true, but
But
that's
when
not,
it is, it shouldn't be.
it shouldn't be. I remember a preacher telling me one time, I was asking how the church was doing, and they made a comment like, well, it's going, but it's like a car without an engine, and I'm pushing. If I stop pushing, the car stops moving. And so you don't want to perpetuate that. You want
No.
all members working together in love. The proper, you can plug your Ephesians 4 in here.
It points along my vast 54 years of preaching career. I have literally stopped doing some things
Yeah.
so that somebody else would have to take ownership of it. It didn't always work.
I've done that. Yeah.
But-
Watch it fall apart.
Yeah, it's all no. But you can get too much of a function of the church in certain roles
Yeah.
that keep other people from finding where they belong.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we, who are many, are one body in Christ, individually members one of another. Since Ephesians 4:16, that which every joint supplies, proper working of each individual part. Since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, each of us is to exercise them accordingly. If prophecy, which essentially, what you think of prophecy, you think of something that over yonder in several years. That's not really what's major league. Look at the prophets of the Old Testament. Most of what they were talking about was what's happening right now to the people who are alive right there.
They're speaking on behalf of God.
Yes,
They're
yes.
speaking a word for the Lord.
Preaching, as it were,
Yeah. And sometimes, even without
being a preacher.
having prophecy in the sense of, there are times where you can read a room or you can read and you're watching. I can see, because of what I know of Scripture, that if the church keeps doing what it's doing,
Cause effect.
here's what I see down the road.
Yes.
And I mean, when you read Paul says, if you don't change, here's where you're going.
And it's like pointing a nose on your face if you look.
Yeah. And it really, and there are people who are good at that, who can see that, can read the room.
Spiritual cause and effect. There were men of Issachar who
Yeah.
understood the times. Well, there are people today who get what's going on and what that means.
Yep.
There are others who don't. If service in his serving, an interesting thing to me at minister, you could translate minister as servant.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had on the outside your door, servant,
Sermon.
because that's really what it's all about. If service in his serving, or he who teaches in his teaching, or he who exhorts in his exhortation, Barnabas was like so important in that role.
Yep.
He who gives with liberality, Paul will talk about rich people. And he doesn't say sell everything. He says be generous, help people with your riches. It's good that some people are rich.
Yep.
It's good that some people are willing to share their money, or we wouldn't be here talking to you.
Yeah.
He who leads with diligence, which means if you're a leader, you have to stay with it. You don't move in and out, in and out. You're a leader. He who shows mercy with cheerfulness, not grudgingly, well,
Yeah.
okay, I'll
there-
let it go.
And, there are people who are just like my wife, the opposite of me. I'm a natural born teacher. My wife is not. But she is a natural born person who shows mercy. I am not. Meaning she's thinking about people. She's constantly worrying about people, wondering how they can help. And I'm kind of going, oh yeah, that person's suffering. I forgot. Not that I'm
I understand.
purposely forgetting,
Yeah.
but sometimes
That's
I'm
just
so
her.
involved.
She's being
but
herself.
Yeah. And so she exemplifies that, and she helps me. So part of her, I help her.
To exchange gifts.
Yeah, and our gifts complement each other. And we strive in the church. There are times where there are some people who they're great at, hey, I'm reaching out. Hey, I'm reaching out. Like we've got a lady here, with the girls. Every time there's a birthday, every time someone's sick, you get a card in the mail. They're always going to send you a card. And every time it comes in the mail, I'm thinking, wow, I need to do that. I need to do that more.
Yeah,
Guess what I don't do?
Yeah, I know. Yes, these things are what make it work.
Yeah.
Let love be without hypocrisy. Don't fake it. Abhor what is evil. You don't just flirt with it. You don't just, it's not right. You can't stand it. It's what put Jesus on the cross. Cling to what is good.
Yeah.
That can be scary. Jesus did it, got him crucified. But going through life, you come to realize that there are certain things that call to you to accept them or join them that are not good.
Yeah. So there can be a tendency to think because God can save me from something that we lessen the weight or the significance of those sins because, hey, they don't really matter because I'm saved. Jesus' blood is covering me.
Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound?
And he's saying here, if you really want to get to that point, abhor evil. And first, a lot of people when they abhor evil, they always abhor someone else's evil.
Yeah, or they don't have to get involved with it.
Yeah, abhor your evil. Abhor what put Jesus on the cross in your own life.
Own it.
Yeah.
And on other, there was a thing back when I was a kid. This is before your time. But there was
Many things were before.
Well, I know. there was this thing in New York, of all places, where this woman.
My hometown.
Well, okay. There was this woman who had been beaten up and left on the sidewalk, and she's down, and there's all these high-rise things above her, and everybody's looking down on her, and finally she dies after 20-something minutes down there, and nobody. And one of the classic comments that was made, that got repeated, was, "I didn't want to get involved." Well, Christians aren't given the liberty of not getting involved in things that need a Christian's involvement.
Yeah, we could change the world if we.
It's exactly right. But they might not like it. Well, probably they won't. Jesus explains that to the apostles before he leaves. Let love be without hypocrisy, for that which is evil, cling to that which is good. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Have a relationship. That's my brother. That's my sister. We're in the same family.
Yeah.
Give preference to one another in honor. Not lagging behind in diligence. Fervent in spirit. Serving the Lord. You can read right over those things.
Yeah.
But if they are practiced, which requires self-denial, it makes such a difference.
And I like the way the ESV reads that, the outdo one another in showing honor. And just there's this, this world is full of people trying to outdo someone else. I'm trying to be better than the Joneses. Neighbor buys a car, I got to buy a car. He buys this light, I got to buy that light. How about we reverse that and this person served, I want to serve. And it's not like you're trying to compete.
No.
But it's almost like he puts a competitiveness out there in the sense of, if someone is constantly doing something for you, do more for them. And if there's this mutual serving one another, all of our needs.
It's not for one-upmanship. It's because you want to be part of something like that. It's a good thing.
Every marriage counseling that I ever do, I go to this verse and I said, if you want your marriage to work, outdo one another in showing honor. Because in marriages is sometimes where it can get the worst. Where you did that. Oh, you wait till you get home. Watch what I'm gonna do. There's that attitude of I'm gonna outdo.
I owe you one.
No, love, and that's what we're gonna get in Romans 13.
What if Jesus had operated that way? Well, it'd been a short ministry.
Yeah, short everything.
Devoted to prayer, contributing to the needs of the saints, practicing hospitality, and this can be monetary contributing, but oftentimes the needs are emotional.
Yeah. Well, what did Paul say when he was giving the example of the Macedonians? One of the reasons why they could give more than their means was because they first gave of themselves. You gave of your life, your time. A lot of times, someone can give you a couple of dollars and that's going to go away. But if someone spends time with you, that's a whole lot more important than.
Yeah. Everybody, at different times in their life, will need other people a lot. And being that other person or persons can be a lifesaver.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. That's a hard one.
That's the hardest.
Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not be haughty in mind, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own estimation. Oddly enough, in chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians, you find if one hurts, everybody hurts.
Yeah.
If one is happy, rejoicing, everybody is.
Yeah.
That kind of connectivity.
Yeah.
It's not you go to church, you say hello, you got your special circle of friends, and some will be more your friends than others.
Yeah.
But when you hear about Ruth over there or Fred, that's my brother, that's my sister.
Yeah. It's
good job.
I always find it easy when someone's hurting to weep with them. Where I find it hard is to rejoice with those who are rejoicing. I don't know what, it's always that like that's where someone's hurting.
Rejoice for me.
But when someone else is getting accomplishment, maybe that you think you should have gotten, or, those are where I think we fall short in the church is, people are doing well and we don't want to exalt people because if I exalt them, then the
I'm going
spotlight's
down
off
the
me.
ladder a bit. Yeah,
And that's the whole point. Like, humble yourself. Let God exalt you. And He promises
He
us.
will. He will.
He promises us that His servants will, even if you don't get exalted here on this earth.
And paradoxically, you get exalted if you don't exalt yourself. If possible. And there is a possibility element in here, because it's not just you.
Yeah.
Be at peace with all men. It's not always possible, but to make it a goal. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it's written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. But if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him a drink. For in so doing, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
So 21 makes 19 and 20, it gives it a parameters, because a lot of times I've heard people go, I'm not going to punch him, but wait till what God does to him.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the
Get him.
attitude. That's
Yeah.
not the attitude Paul's having. Paul's his point is, everybody will get their just desserts. But he says, that's why he says, do not overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. So you
That's
can't
powerful.
just, I didn't punch him in the face, but you also weren't good to him. There's this, we have that mentality. Yeah, I never did anything bad to
Go
him.
the second mile.
But did you do anything
But did
good
you
for
do
them?
anything positive?
And that's really what makes Christianity stand out.
People can be broken down
Yeah.
by goodness like that and feel guilty themselves. What have I done? Man, I've been a jerk. Coals of fire.
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to diffuse the situation for the jerk to realize that they're a jerk.
And it's not a haughty goodness.
No.
Like there are people who they almost like smugly won't retaliate to make you look like a fool. But there it goes back to that, let love be genuine.
Yes.
You're genuinely a good person who does not want to hurt people.
Like Jesus, and so you act like him.
And even when they hurt you, you want to do good. It's a nature of yours. It becomes a characteristics of wanting to
Again,
love.
Jesus is the perfect example of that.
Yeah. So, and I think any relationship, any kind of relationship that is struggling, if both parties could work on Romans 12, especially 9 through 21, you'll solve all your issues.
I agree. In a more compact way, when I'll do things, not that this is better in the long run, because you get these specificity in there, is I will ask the gentleman if your wife practiced the golden rule, would it be better? Yeah.
Yeah.
If he practiced, say, what if both of you do?
Yeah.
And I mean, they can't argue with you.
Yeah.
They may not want to do it. They may not do it, but they can't say, but okay, I will tell them. I say, here's the key. Here's the solution.
Yeah.
You have it in your hands. That's kind of simplistic, but realistically, if you'll really work on that, you're going to have such an improvement that you don't believe it.
Now there's it's probably one of those preacher stories that it may be over exaggerated, but there's this story of a man and a wife who are going through marriage issues, and the wife, the husband, I think it was the husband, handed her divorce papers. Have you heard this one?
No, I have not.
Well, she also found out that she had cancer and was going to die in like a month or two.
Oh.
And so she basically told her husband, and part of this is true, but I think, like I said, as preachers tell stories, sometimes it can change. She asked, okay, before I sign these divorce papers, all I'm asking is every day you carry me from the bed to the table, you eat with me, whatever. And she was actually getting weaker. Is one of the reasons she didn't want him knowing. But one of the reasons why he was having her carry was because she was having trouble walking through cancer. Well, he did this every day. I mean, they were at the point of divorce, and just that physical contact and him doing something for her, he fell back in love with her, and ripped up the divorce papers. And then found out, she had cancer. But imagine if they would have done that.
That makes sense, because that's how that works.
Yeah, years and years. But just go. You can take your enemy, and if you are praying for them and trying to love them, you cannot hate them.
No, you start looking at yourself in a different way as well.
Yeah. So, practical living, Christian living.
And it's sprinkled all around.
And it all comes back to, he says, by the mercies of God. Think about how much God has loved you.
Yeah. Return the favor. Give back.
Go and love others. There's Romans chapter 12. Hope you guys enjoyed. Love you. God bless.